Apologies for the delay there. I know that it was a little bit of delayed getting on, but um, all good now, and we're ready to go for the show today. So how's everybody doing? Hope everyone's having a good week so far, and obviously just got done watching Hot Stove for the Yankees and another quiet one. There's really not much happening with the Yankees right now. In terms of moves they're making in the offseason. They've done very little. They brought back Ahmed Rosario on a 1 year, $2.5 million deal. Rosario's a good platoon guy. He's a good bench bat. I think he had like an 125 weighted runs created plus last year against left-handed pitching, so he's a good platoon for McMahon at third base. So the Yankees did do that, but very quiet. Nothing on the Bellinger front. Nothing on the starting pitching front. And the one good news for the Yankees the one piece of good news for the Yankees that I'll say is a lot of their targets have not signed yet. Like, their so-called targets. Like, if you look at Bo Bichette, if you look at Cody Bellinger, if you look at Kyle Tucker, if you look at Michael King, Tetsuya Imai, like, none of these guys have signed yet. So, theoretically, the Yankees are still in those markets. Theoretically, the Yankees could still obviously get those guys. But from everything that's gone on, this offseason really, and we'll get into a bunch of stuff related to the Yankees, but this offseason really reminds me of the 2021 Yankee offseason, where you got to January and the Yankees really hadn't done anything. And obviously their big free agent that they lost that year was DJ LeMahieu. And the Yankees went out in free agency and they signed DJ LeMahieu to a 6-year, $90 million deal in like the middle of January. I believe it was like January 15th. And then a couple weeks later, maybe a week and a half later, they traded for Jameson Taillon, who ended up being their big trade acquisition of the offseason. And that was basically the offseason. It was trade for Taillon, signed LeMahieu, and that was it. And to me, the Cody Bellinger market is kind of playing out like the DJ LeMahieu market, where Bellinger is asking for a very high price, and his agent Scott Boras is asking for a very high price. But the bottom line is, I don't believe Bellinger is going to get that price. And I think because of that, it's a big waiting game. It's a game of chicken right now going on. And I think the question is who blinks first. And I do think there's a world where maybe even in the new year, as it was the case with LeMahieu, the Yankees and Bellinger are able to come to an agreement. Maybe Bellinger's camp comes down. Maybe the Yankees camp goes up a little bit the way negotiations work, and the Yankees retain Bellinger. But this is reminding me a lot of that 2021 offseason where the Yankees were hell-bent on bringing back like one of their main free agent departures in the offseason, and they're not doing a whole lot else. And I think that's kind of where I want to begin is how are the Yankees not being more aggressive right now? Like, you look around the American League East, the Toronto Blue Jays have gotten better. They went out and got Dylan Cease. They've went out and made moves in their bullpen. They have been aggressive, and they've obviously been linked to Kyle Tucker, and as of now, they're probably the favorites to sign Kyle Tucker, who is the best free agent bat on the market. That's a team that made the World Series last year, went to Game 7. They've been more aggressive than you. You look at the Baltimore Orioles. They went out and signed Pete Alonso to a 5-year, $150 million deal. Big free agent signing. The Yankees last year, I remind you, for 4 months of the season, up until, around the trade deadline, the Yankees were unwatchable last year. Unwatchable. They were one of the most underachieving teams in baseball last year up until that July 31st deadline when they got hot and they went on that run in August and September and made the postseason. But for 4 out of 6 months last year, the Yankees were an unwatchable product. They should be chomping at the bit. They should be running to do things, running to make moves, and they're not. The inactivity of the Yankees is unacceptable. And it just speaks to the complacency of Brian Cashman and Hal Steinbrenner in their current positions. There's no push to get better from a team that last year, as I said, was nowhere near as good as it needed to be for the majority of the season, and went out there in the divisional round against the Blue Jays and got spanked 3-1. So it's unacceptable that they're not doing more. A couple things I want to run through with the Yankees. First of all, the Michael King interest. That was a big topic the last week. The Yankees are in a kind of a not a bidding war, but they're in the market for Michael King, along with the Orioles, along with the Red Sox, along with the Mets that are involved as well. And I want to talk about King a little bit because I think he's really an interesting player this offseason because I do think that there is a chance that a team gets in on the ground floor on Michael King's services and they get incredible value. Because Michael King, prior to the 2024 season, the 2025 season, if Michael King goes out in 2025 and has just a normal season, doesn't get injured, kind of just pitches through the season, Michael King would have gotten the Dylan Cease contract, maybe even more than that. Michael King probably was in line for a $200+ million contract. Because at his best, Michael King is a top flight starting pitcher. But he has the thoracic nerve issue in his shoulder. He misses like 3.5 months of the season. He comes back in September. It's a little up and down. He has another injury that puts him on the injured list again, and then he enters free agency basically without pitching last year. Right? He had one major injury and then the knee injury, so he basically didn't pitch, and his value has come down. My thoughts on Michael King is this: I thought you could probably get Michael King at a lower rate than it seems like he's going to go for. It seems like Michael King is going to get around a 4-year, $100 million contract. Now, again, as I mentioned, you could be getting him for half of his true market value if this booms. But Michael King has now had a major elbow injury. He's had a major shoulder injury. And committing 4 years to a guy who's had that injury concern, I'm not overly enamored with, personally. I like Michael King. I think Michael King is a great starting pitcher. I mentioned I think he would have gotten $200 million in the market if he never got injured. But the reality is, if I'm the Yankees, I would rather sign Imai for, 5 years, $140 million than sign Michael King to 4 years, $100 million, because I'm still giving King a 4-year contract. I'm still committing to him for multiple years. If I could get King on a 2-year deal, maybe a 2-year deal with an option, I would be much more into that. But it seems like Michael King's going to get a 4-year deal. And I'm not overly enamored with giving him a 4-year deal. And, if I had to guess, I think he probably goes back to the Red Sox. I think I think he has connections to Boston, the Boston area. I think he would love to pitch there. I do wonder if he would even come back to the Yankees after they traded him away. That normally doesn't work out. Obviously, he'll go where the money is, but I'm not sure he's, rare. I'm not sure he's overly enthusiastic about going back to the Yankees. So that's my thoughts on Michael King. I like Michael King. I think a team could absolutely get a bargain on him and really get one of the best value signings of the offseason. But to me, he still seems like he's commanding a pretty big contract. I personally would not go there. Let me throw out two things. I tweeted this the other day. I believe a plan that I could really get behind for the Yankee offseason is as follows. Sign Bo Bichette and trade for Steven Kwan to play left field. And in this scenario, you'd obviously lose Cody Bellinger. But here's why I say that. There's a lot of rumors floating around about Jazz Chisholm being traded. And I think that, Jazz is in the last year of his contract. The Yankees clearly, I think, are hesitant to give him a long-term extension. I think it's very possible that Jazz is not here next year. And everybody and their mother is saying, well, trade Jazz and sign Bo Bichette. But my issue with that is if you trade Jazz Chisholm and he's off the team, right? Guy who went 30-30 last year and missed a month, really talented player. If you trade Jazz and you bring in Bo, are you really better off? Maybe a little bit. But if in that same scenario you're losing Cody Bellinger as well, then to me you're not better. Like, it's been floated around, I was sent this week about Austin Hayes, who is a free agent outfielder. Really good hitter against left-handed pitching. So I was sent, I was sent these stats. And the stats basically say if you have Hayes and Dominguez platooning in left field, they basically match the production of Cody Bellinger offensively. Now, Of course, they don't match the production of Cody Bellinger defensively. Dominguez is not a good left fielder. Bellinger is one of the best left fielders in the game defensively. But just stay with me for a second. So they match his production offensively. That's great, right? But if you bring in Austin Hayes and you bring in Bo Bichette and you lose Jazz Chisholm and Cody Bellinger, it's basically a wash. You're not better. You're not better. So here's my plan. And what I would do if I was running the New York Yankees. Bring in Bo Bichette, play him at shortstop in 2026. He's not ancient. He doesn't have, he doesn't have 60-man knees, 60-year-old man knees. He could play shortstop one season. And then after the lockout or whatever, you can reevaluate and maybe move him to second. So my middle infield next year would be Bo Bichette and Jazz Chisholm. And then you trade for Steven Kwan to replace Bellinger's defense in left field. Kwan has been in the league 4 years. He's won 4 Gold Gloves. He probably is the best left fielder defensively in the game. And you want to change the feel of your lineup in October? You want to change the feeling of the top of your order? Steven Kwan, Bo Bichette, Aaron Judge. That 1, 2, 3 could absolutely dominate teams and could be a nightmare for opposing pitchers in the postseason. And to me, I would not trade Jazz Chisholm because I do think the Bo Bichette thing is going to gain some steam because I think Bo's market is probably one of the most suppressed markets that we have in the offseason. I would not trade Jazz Chisholm to bring in Bo Bichette. I'm not going to cut off my nose to spite my face. It doesn't make sense. What I would do, though, is I would play Bo at shortstop for 1 year, have Bo and Jazz, and then replace Bellinger's defense in left field with a much more cost-controlled Steven Kwan, who, while not the best hitter, I do think he's still a very good bat-to-ball guy, and, as I said, 4-time Gold Glover in left field. So all of a sudden, you have a lineup of Kwan, Judge, Bo, Rice, Stanton, Grisham. It starts to be a really formidable lineup. And it starts to be a lineup that I think has a different feel. And that's what I wanted to do in this offseason. I wanted to change the feeling of the Yankee lineup because it's the same old song and dance every postseason. Too many strikeouts is the same thing. You want to change that? Sign Bo Bichette and trade for Steven Kwan. So that's what I would do if I was running the Yankees. Are the Yankees going to do that? I have no idea. The Yankees are going to wait till the cows come home for Cody Bellinger to sign. So that's where it's at with the Yankees. Again, not much happening. I'm trying to make content best I can here with the Yankees. They have made basically no moves. So I don't really know kind of what else to say about that. But that's my Yankee spiel. Let's get to the Knicks. First time, I think, talking about the Knicks on one of these live streams. So the Knicks win the NBA Cup. And, there's so much I want to get to here, so I'm going to try to kind of piece it through. There is no franchise that I can remember that has come as far as the Knicks have from 2020 to 2025 over the last 6 years, 5-6 years. From the decision from Jim Dolan to bring on Leon Rose and Worldwide West to run the basketball operations, to the bringing on of Tom Thibodeau as the head coach, to trading for Jalen Brunson, for signing Jalen Brunson, for trading for Josh Hart, to trading for OG Anunoby, to trading for Mikal Bridges, to trading for Karl Anthony Towns. The Knicks, along the way, have, I think, made basically every right move. They've just made every decision correctly over the course of these last 5 years. From who they hired in the front office, to who they hired as the coach, to who they brought in for the players. They have done a fantastic job. And they've come so far as an organization that was truly a joke, the laughingstock of not just New York sports, but sports in general, right? A laughingstock. To now, I think, one of the better run franchises in the NBA. And the Knicks deserve unbelievable credit for that. And here's how you know, and this is what I want to say, the NBA Cup matters to the players. And I think you can understand why it matters to the players. When you watch the NBA Cup games, it's undeniable from a normal regular season game, which is kind of unwatchable to begin with, to the NBA Cup games. The NBA Cup games are way more intense. They're played at a much higher level than a normal run-of-the-mill regular season game. So the bottom line is the NBA Cup matters to the players. And the other reason it matters to the players is you have minimum salary guys on the bench, the end of the bench, who are making, I don't know, 400K, 500K in a season. And they're literally making half or even as much as their full salaries from the NBA Cup prize winnings that they're given from the NBA, because I think the prize is like 500K per player for winning the NBA Cup. And again, for Jalen Brunson, that doesn't matter who's making whatever he's making a year. But for a guy at the end of the bench, for Tyler Kolek, as you saw in the game on Tuesday night, it mattered a lot to him. And it matters a lot to the end of the bench guys. So the NBA Cup matters to the players. It absolutely matters to the players. But here is the reality. I'm speaking as a fan. I can only speak as a fan. It doesn't mean that much to me. And the reason I know it doesn't mean that much to me, and, there was a ton of talk about, well, should the Knicks hang a banner or not? And the Knicks as an organization, again, I talk about how far they've come as an organization. They decided against to hang the banner in Madison Square Garden because they have bigger goals. They want to win the championship. They want to hang obviously the Eastern Conference Championship banner and then hopefully an NBA Finals banner. But the reality is this. Treating the NBA Cup like winning the NBA championship is just a completely disingenuous thing to do. The Knicks in the NBA Cup played 7 total games. They played 4 round robin games, and then they played a quarterfinal, semifinal, and a final. They played 7 total games. When you win the NBA Finals and you win the NBA championship, you're going through 4 rounds of 7-game series. 4 7-game series to win the NBA Finals. And so to act like putting that banner up, you could put the banner up, but it doesn't mean anything, right? I mean, what do you, it's like I use this example. Am I going to tell my kids one that, it's like I was there in 1970 when Willis Reed hobbled out of the tunnel, and that's what that banner means, right? You look up at that 1970 championship banner, and I was, you got a grandpa or a father saying, "Oh, I was there when Willis Reed limped out of the tunnel," or "I was there in 2009 when the Yankees won the World Series," or "I was there in 1996 when Girardi was running around the bases and the place was shaking." Compare that to, well, I was watching on a Tuesday night, when Victor Wembanyama was on a 20-minute minutes restriction in the NBA Cup in Las Vegas. Do you see the difference? It's not the same thing. It's just not. So this idea that, well, we got to hang a banner to symbolize what we did. Yeah, but the banner doesn't mean what you think it means. You're hanging a banner that means nothing compared to what it would mean to win a championship. And that's the reality of the whole situation. It's that the Knicks as an organization have come so far, and they have a chance in hopefully May and June to be a championship team. And that is what they're striving for. That is their goal. And I think that it would diminish that goal to put up a banner for winning, for playing 7 games in an NBA Cup tournament. Like, to act like that is the same thing and is the same level of hard work and blood, sweat, and tears and all those things that go into it is just completely ridiculous. So that's the reality with the Knicks in the NBA Cup. They proved how good of a team they are. They proved that they're a team that can win a championship. They have a player in Jalen Brunson who I don't think there's 5 better New York athletes in the last 10 years than Jalen Brunson. I don't. I think he is what he means to the city of New York, what he means to the Knicks, what he means to their fans, I think is it's unquantifiable. But you have to be able to separate the two. And it's great that you win the NBA Cup, but acting like you won the championship, no, you didn't win the championship. And those goals are still ahead of them, and the team understands that. So I have no complaints about that. But people who wanted them to hang a banner, you just got to understand that they can hang a banner. It just doesn't mean what you think it means. So that's my Knicks spiel. Let's get to the Giants. And The Giants have lost 8 games in a row. They're 2-12 on the season. But I'm actually going to start with a couple positives, if you can believe it. I'm going to start with a positive. And I called this guy out a couple weeks ago, so I have to be fair. Abdul Carter was a beast on Sunday. I'm going to read his stat line here. 7 total tackles, 1 sack, 3 tackles for loss, 2 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery. He was the player the Giants drafted number 3rd overall on Sunday against Washington. He was a beast. He was unblockable. He was making big plays. He was making impact plays. That's what we've been waiting for from Abdul Carter. And man, did he do it on Sunday. And I have to give him a ton of credit because for a team that is 2-12 and for a team that has lost 8 games in a row, Carter, who has already had some issues off the field this year, could have easily just kind of checked out. Could have easily just kind of turned his head off. Okay, see you guys in May for the offseason program. I'm kind of done with this. He didn't do that. He put his head down, he went to work, and he was dominant on Sunday and had his best game as a pro. And that's really encouraging for the Giants, who need Abdul Carter to be an impact player. So props to Abdul Carter. I thought he was great in the game, and I'm very excited to keep watching him. I hope he can stack it, and I hope he can keep playing well. But overall, it was a great performance from Carter. Now we get into some negatives, and the first guy I'm going to mention before I get to the quarterback is Darius Slayton. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Darius Slayton has been a New York Giant since 2019. I can point to Darius Slayton having key drops in 2020, in 2021, in 2022, in 2023, in 2024, and this year, 2025. Every year. And if you keep putting them out there, you're going to keep having huge drops in big situations. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And somehow, this moron GM gave him a $36 million contract where it's very hard to cut him next year against the cap. Can you believe that? I think he has like an $18 million salary cap hit next year. This guy, this stiff. And the drops that this guy has. I mean, Sunday was another one. Jackson Dart, beautiful pass. He just can't catch a cold. It's ridiculous. How many key drops has he had just this season? You look at the Saints game where Dart threw the beautiful deep ball, drop. Sunday, 3rd down opportunity, drop. Touchdown in the end zone, drop. The San Francisco Niner game, now it was in garbage time, but wide open in the end zone, drop. I mean, this guy's dropping passes that a 3rd grader could catch. I mean, it's just ridiculous how bad he is. Truly. Truly. But the Giants just keep running him out there. Hard to fathom. It's just hard to fathom that we are still watching Darius Slayton drop passes for the New York Giants in the year 2025. It is just, it's mind-boggling. It's absolutely mind-boggling. So yeah, that's the Slayton spiel. I don't know what to say about Slayton. I don't. He is it's just I don't know. The Giants paid him like he was a starting wide receiver. And he just is awful. He's just awful. Let's get to Dart a little bit. And, Dart, again, was in the firestorm this week for a couple of reasons. The first reason was Dart gets checked again for a concussion. And I believe he's had 10 starts in his career, and he's been checked for a concussion 5 out of 10 starts. Some obscene number, right? And, Dart came off the field for 2 plays, and then he came back on, and he was able to finish the game, and he's fine this week. So he doesn't have another concussion, and he's only had 1 on the season. There's a couple things going on here. The first thing is everybody right now is targeting Jackson Dart. The media, coaches, it's gotten a little ridiculous. and it's gotten a little bit out of hand. How many people now are targeting Jackson Dart? The play that Jackson Dart got injured on Sunday, or injured because he only came out for 2 plays, it wasn't like he got decapitated in the middle of the field. It wasn't like he was running down the middle of the field and chose not to slide. He was running like a QB keeper, and he got hit, and he got up slowly, and he got checked for a concussion. And the other thing is, we can't blame the coaching staff because, according to Mike Kafka, who the head coach of the Giants, that play was actually supposed to be a pass. And Jackson Dart basically took the ball and tried to run in the end zone. So that's not on the coaching, that play. That play is on Dart for trying to make something out of nothing, and that's what you get. But the reality is, if you watch the NFL on Sunday, saw it with J.J. McCarthy in the Sunday night game, quarterbacks around the league are taking big hits. They're getting laid out. And they're not being singled out like Jackson Dart is. It feels like the concussion fiasco against the Eagles, where Brian Dable went into the medical tent and that whole thing. And then obviously the Bears game where he gets the concussion and then he actually plays 2 plays concussed before eventually coming out. It feels like the NFL right now is targeting Jackson Dart. There's no doubt about it. The second thing is coaches. Coaches are targeting Jackson Dart. There was a clip that came out this week of the Washington Commanders head coach and also their defensive coordinator, both basically saying, "Hey, if this guy's running the open field, you got to spearhead him. You've got to hit him. You got to treat him like a runner." And the memo around the league is clear. Put this guy on his ass. That's the memo, right? That people are saying, "Hey, look, if Jackson Dart is going to run, we're going to treat him like a runner, and we're going to put big hits on him." And again, there's other running quarterbacks in the league. Lamar Jackson runs a lot. Josh Allen runs a lot. There's a lot of running quarterbacks. But Jackson Dart is being singled out here. And it's going to be very interesting to see how Dart responds to this and how Dart responds to this next year with the new coaching staff because, I've said this before. You can't change the way Jackson Dart plays the game. You've got to let him be him, and you've got to let him run the football. What you can't have, though, is a player who is not learning when and where to take his hits. And there was another play on Sunday, actually, I think it was his longest run of the season, where he had a big run down the middle of the field, and, he's in the open field. He has a lot of room to slide. And he doesn't slide. He just kind of takes the hit on, and he's got to figure that out and slide in those instances. But people are acting like Jackson Dart is, people are acting like he's taking these, punishing hits. The hit that took him out of the game on Sunday was not a punishing hit. It wasn't. It was a run right around the line of scrimmage, and he got, tangled up, and that was that. It wasn't like he, was knocked off his spot. It wasn't like the New England hit where he was literally, decked out of bounds and went flying, right? It wasn't like that. So I just think it's a little bit unfair that people are kind of singling him out now. And there's no doubt he's got to protect himself better, period. You cannot have 5 concussion checks in 10 games. Got to figure it out, Jackson. Have to. But at some point, we've got to understand he's being singled out here. And it's not really fair. So that's my Dart thing. There's obviously going to be a lot more on the Giants as we get into the offseason here because they're going to have a whole coaching search, potentially a GM search. And obviously the draft is going to be very interesting, especially if they're picking, where they're picking now, the number 1 pick. So a lot to get to with the Giants, but right now 2-12 and 8 losses in a row. Want to finish with this, and this is a non-New York sports topic, but I thought it was interesting, and I wanted to kind of run through it. So the big news over the weekend in the NFL was Patrick Mahomes tears his ACL, and this is a horrible thing for the NFL. Horrible. Whatever you think of the Chiefs, whatever you think of Kelsey and Taylor Swift and all those things, Patrick Mahomes is the face of the NFL. Patrick Mahomes is one of the greatest quarterbacks that's ever walked the earth. And the NFL clearly takes a hit when Patrick Mahomes is not on the field playing. and he's not going to be on the field for the rest of this year, and he's probably going to miss at least half of next year. So that is a blow to the league, and it's such a shame what happened to Mahomes. And prayers up to him. You hope he's okay going forward. And the Brady Mahomes comps are kind of scary. They really are. It's you know Mahomes in his first 9 years won 3 Super Bowls, lost two, and in his ninth year he tears his ACL, and coming off of a year where he loses the Super Bowl. And Tom Brady in his first 9 years, 3 Super Bowl wins, one loss to the Giants in 2007. And then he tears his ACL week one of 2008. And again, the parallels are crazy between the two guys. And, Brady, when he tore his ACL, he came back and obviously had, one of the most remarkable second acts of a career in the history of the NFL, right? So he won 3 Super Bowls pre-ACL tear, and then post ACL tear, he won 4 more Super Bowls. Obviously, 3 with New England and then 1 with the Tampa Bay Bucks to close his career out. And what I'm very curious, and this is the great thing about sports, Patrick Mahomes, what is his second act going to be? Because there's no doubt with Mahomes, he started out his career like a rocket ship, right? Throwing 50 touchdown passes early in his career. Obviously, those teams with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and a young Mahomes, it was the greatest show on turf, basically. And Mahomes, when you look at his numbers, Mahomes was just remarkable early in his career, from like a touchdown. And I'm just gonna look up his numbers here, just so I can get the exact ones. So Mahomes starts his career 50 touchdown pass. First year as a starter, 50 touchdown passes, 26 touchdown passes, 38, 37, 41. Then his last 3 years, 27, 26, and 22 this year. Now, obviously, this year shortened a little bit, but he was on pace for about 27 touchdowns, which is where he's been the last 3 years. And there's been a clear drop-off from those first 5 years to the next 4. And I am really intrigued to see what is the second act of Patrick Mahomes' career. Does he continue down this road of, quite frankly, not being the same player that he was when he was winning MVPs early in his career and winning the Super Bowls? Or, similar to Tom Brady, the greatest of all time, does he have a second act that cements his legacy as, one of the 3 greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game? And I think that is really going to be fascinating with Mahomes, because it was clearly getting to a point where, it's kind of like, you're kind of elbowing the guy next to you like, hey, you kind of don't want to say it out loud, but it was the truth. Patrick Mahomes was not the same player the last 3 years. And obviously one of those years he actually won a Super Bowl somehow, but he was not the same guy that he was early in his career. And now it feels like this ACL tear is an inflection point for Mahomes. And when he comes back next year, in the middle of the year, what kind of player is he going to be? That's going to be really fascinating. So yeah, I think that's it. A little bit shorter today. Again, not a ton of Yankees news, as I mentioned off the top of the show, to kind of go through. But hey, we're waiting. Whenever things happen, we will be here to react to it. And yeah, follow me on social media, Chris_NYY28. You can get me on all the platforms there. Hope everyone has a good rest of their week and a good weekend. And yeah.